So this guy dies, doesn't take the trip north, takes a trip south, and he gets down there, he's bummed, and he's met by Satan, and he's just expecting the worst, and Satan's like, hey, it's not so bad, come on in. Really, I think I think I get a lot of bad press. A lot of fake news going around. It's not that horrible down here. What's your name? Kevin. Kevin, let me ask you something. You like drinking? Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons I'm here. Half my life, I was drunk. I did a lot of stupid things when I was drunk. He goes, you know what? Mondays, we drink all day. From the second you get up, start out with Bloody Marys. All day, all night, we drink everything you can imagine. Unlimited. You get a good buzz early, and you just keep the party rolling all night. It's not that bad. Oh, yeah, I guess it's all right. How about drugs, Kevin? Do you do drugs? If I wasn't drunk, I was doing drugs. Because you know what? The Tuesdays are your days. We start off in the morning with a little weed. Through the afternoon, some cocaine, ecstasy the whole time, of course. And Cameron's like, yeah, of course. And then he goes, and then it's just black tar heroin the rest of the night. You are going to love Tuesdays. Yeah, I guess it's okay. Women, Kevin, you like women? That's the trifecta. That's probably the other reason I'm here. We, all day, anything you can possibly think of, the most twisted, sickest fetish you can imagine, big women, tall women, every ethnicity, everything you can imagine. Wednesday, all we do, it's a fuck fest from morning, noon to night. Wow. That sounds pretty good. Okay. Do you like being gang raped anally? No! Thursday's not your day.
That was the Carnival Personnel Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. The sun's going down. It's time to go to bed. Good night.
Hope it's not Thursday. Hey, welcome to Carnival Personnel. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
And lots going on. Joseph, we had our first Carnival Personnel outing of the year.
Yes. It was not much like the Thursdays in hell.
Not much like Mondays, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays either.
I know. It was a special kind of hell. No, it was very nice. It was a Simpsons trivia night in Somerville.
And what kind of place was it at?
It was a ballroom.
A ballroom with a ballroom kind of.
Yeah. It used to be called Anthony's Ballroom, and now it's called Once Ballroom.
And to fill everybody in, we're going to start the show with the ending of the show, wrap our parenting tip of the week into it, because Joe and I both took our kids.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, it was a family outing. It was great. Well, I mean, you can't call him a kid anymore. Well, he's always a kid, but...
Yeah, he's 18. He's of age. He got his... invitation to the Marines in the mail the other day because he had to sign up for selective service because he's a able-bodied, quote-unquote, male, aged 18 to 25. So, yeah, but we tried our hand at some Simpsons trivia. Full house.
Packed.
Yeah, every table was taken. You were kind of late-ish. We got there in time for trivia, but not in time to get good seats. So we had the bitch sheets along the wall, the wallflower seats.
There's no real bad seats at Simpson Trivia, is there?
But I was, I was ready to play. I don't go to trivia nights often, and I don't play trivia games with my family much because they know how hyper competitive I am at stuff like that. Like, you saw me on television for the 15 minutes when I was, on Wheel of Fortune. I was there to win, and I was at Simpsons Trivia Night to win. Unfortunately, I had a bunch of losers on my team who couldn't pull their weight.
Well, not 100% sure. We guilty as charged. I will speak for myself. Guilty as charged, and Joe's jam is The Simpsons, or one of his jams. His son also, they very much, most of their father-son talks aren't their own thoughts, much like us on the podcast. It's regurgitating lines from The Simpsons.
We only exclusively speak in Simpsons quotes. As you can tell by the shelf on my wall over there, the top shelf is every Simpsons DVD up to season 17 or whatever. But yeah, like we were trying our hand at Simpsons trivia, and lo and behold, I didn't know that much about Simpsons. I mean, they stuck to the first 10, 12 seasons, so that was within my wheelhouse. It's not like they did something from the mid-2000s. But I was actually very, very, very surprised and pleased to see that there were a couple of blanks that I couldn't fill, but your son did.
Yeah. There was one thing where the picture the picture round where there was 10 pictures up there, and one of the stumping questions is like the kids next door, the Flanders kids. Which one is Todd and which one is Rod? Got a couple people, but then there was a snake, and my oldest one insisted he knew, and Joe's like, fine, whatever. And there was another one, right? He had two.
Yeah, there was another question, and when in Lisa's class, when they had to dissect an animal, what did Ralph say he accidentally swallowed? And your son immediately said, a worm. And I'm like, in my head, wow, you're really fucking stupid. They don't dissect worms. Turns out they do. And it turns out that he was right. And luckily, at the very last second, right before he was about to hand up our answer sheet, he noticed that I didn't write worm on there, and he goes, no, it's a worm. And I'm like, fine, worm. I even spelled it wrong out of spite, and I gave it to him. He didn't notice. And no, but he was right, and I was pleased, and I wished he was my son at that particular moment in time.
Fine.
No, just for that one question.
Oh, okay. So once again, let's not gloss over the fact that I took my 7 and 10-year-old to a bar,
right,
to do Simpson trivia.
They only had one drink.
Seriously, well,
between them,
yeah,
lightweights.
they well, don't forget, they're only part Irish.
The good part.
Hello, but it was fun. And it's one of those things where Joe and his kid, very, very respectable in how they did. And it's one of those things where you see the people who did really, really well on it, and you're like, okay, I'm pretty good with some life decisions I made.
I have to say, myself, my son, and your two sons, I think were the only men in there, males, without beards. Like everybody in there, I mean, it's a whole generational thing. These guys were like, post college, maybe mid college age, or early 20s to 30. They're all like, a lot of them were the quintessential hipster stereotype. They had the shirts.
I think it's hipster douchebag stereotype is the exact.
But they were, they were, and actually I was surprised to see there was another youngster who had a better seat than we did, because their parents arrived early.
Well, Joe was there in plenty of time. I was picking management up from the airport who was just coming back, and then she played the whole, it's Mike's roast beef, which we were driving right by, and I've been on a flight for the last 8 hours, and I'm really hungry.
Wow.
Right. And so I had to break down and feed the family before I dragged her, literally right from the plane where she had to fly cross country, taking care of 3-year-old twins, off the plane, right into the car to go to Somerville. Like who's taking somebody to Somerville?
I know. People who live in Somerville don't get that quickly to Somerville. From
really?
The
do we
airport.
have to go to Somerville?
I know, right?
But it was a fun evening. It was our first Carnival podcast outing.
Yep. And we didn't know we were going until we were kind of toying with the idea until like the last minute, and luckily
the stars aligned.
Yes. So it was fun. And enough about fun. Let's get to the real podcast.
You know what? We should have gone to Jared.
Why?
Because everybody else around the free, not only in the free world, everybody else around the world. Now, I haven't talked to Joe about this. It's on the rundown. We talked about it a little. If you're a devoted Carnival personnel listener, wow, I'll just leave it at that. But months ago, when the blockade of Qatar started, I, having spent time there and having great friends there, kind of gave a different perspective that wasn't really covered by the news. And I thought it was quite interesting that Qatar is the most pro-U.S. place in that region. It's where all our military is, period, the end. Blotus had gone over to Saudi Arabia, and then as soon as he got back, the blockade was put in place, launched by Saudi Arabia and Dubai. And Blotus took credit for basically putting these wheels in motion. And I had read how Jared had been in Qatar just before this, and he was trying to get money for their, I forget, is it 666 Park Ave building? It is 666.
I know. Yeah, you're right.
But I don't know if it's 666 Park Ave building that's upside down, and he couldn't get funding through Qatar resources. And I thought it was a little coincidental that, he gets denied these loans, and now all of a sudden, dad-in-law is... because like I said, even all my military friends, in Qatar, mostly Republican people in the military, they were like, what the fuck is he doing? This is really stupid. This is XYZ. Saudi Arabia is not our friend. And now it's come out like months later after we talked about it. It's like now that's being investigated. And Qatar has been asked by the World Court if they want them to look into it further. Was it retaliation? That's just come out in the last 48 hours has been part of the talk. Is it part of retaliation that that's using his influence? The other thing is now it's China. I forget. There's been China, Turkey, Qatar. There was another country. There's been 4 countries that are being looked at in the Mueller investigation as Jared 100% using his position as Junior Secretary of State. I forget exactly the exact title he has, but people are now putting all the clues together. It's like he was their access. He was these people's access to Blotus, to the President of the United States, sadly, and he was, while meeting with all these people, actively fundraising because his family's company is in dire straits. Money ain't for nothing.
Chicks for free. And
so that building has a $1.2 billion balloon payment coming the first of next year.
I love balloons.
Which they're not going to be able to meet. So that his family is fucked, basically. And so he's been using his position, and because of his security clearance problem, he doesn't have it anymore. And people know, we can go through Jared to get this happening and stuff like that. So, good times.
Did you get all that? Good.
But we were here to break it first that it was a little too coincidental that Jarrett went over to Qatar, didn't get the loans he wanted, and a week later, his wife's daddy, lowered the hammer on them. So
I have a feeling that in the next generation, the name Jared is going to be the least popular male name.
I hope so. But that's so this week, him and Ivanka have lost their security clearance.
Or did they?
Well, I mean, it's like that's the thing. It's like, Blotus, who has no problem bringing the KGB into the Oval Office without American thing there. And then he tells them, it's like, we got this tip on what's going on with ISIS through the Israelis. And the Israelis turn around. It's like, yeah, you weren't supposed to tell them. They're not friends of ours, douchebag.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, we're not going to sell guns to children anymore. But if an adult in the house buys guns, they can, by all means give them their guns. So, right. That's the same thing here.
It's like, so it is, but it
means more work for Trump.
But it's been, and we know there's nothing he likes more than work. But now the infighting, it's been another week of, of his probably most, everyone considers this woman Hope Hicks, his most trusted non-family member, advisor, confidant, in the inner circle. She does her testimony last week, comes out and says, well, yeah, I've told little white lies, and and was asked to clarify. It's like,
tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
She was quantifying by saying, if somebody wants to meet with him, I'll say he's busy. And he's really not. It's like, well, of course he's not. Unless he's golfing. So she comes out, and her meeting was on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, she announces she's resigning, but it has nothing to do with the testimony that she gave on Tuesday. No. She's been thinking this for a while. Right. Jared and Ivanka lose their security clearance, and General Kelly. Basically, it's been a big pissing contest. And now at the same time, just making sure I'm not skipping ahead.
God forbid.
Did I skip ahead?
We don't want to be. Yeah. God forbid we get off track on this podcast.
I'm trying to get better, but it is. It's been a hell week, an absolute hell week in the White House. Mm-hmm. Another Twitter session going after Sessions, who then retaliates by going out with like the two people overseeing the Mueller investigation, and just coincidentally has a picture of them all eating together that night in a DC restaurant and posts it. It's like, that was a good fuck you. And then also, what is it? McMaster's, who is the head of Homeland Security, who's like, basically he's come out and said, oh yeah, my days are numbered. You know what I mean? So, but there was all these lists the other day. There was like 16 things between Wednesday and Thursday in a 24-hour span, like 16 big announcement things, like he started a trade war. Didn't tell anybody, the Commerce Secretary.
You know what happened last time there was a trade war? Phantom Menace.
Oh, that's right. The stream executive power. They took off the banking regulations.
So who would be the Jar Jar Binks in this situation?
Ooh, well, because we haven't really figured out, was Jar Jar a simpleton or the Sith?
Is Jared potentially?
He could be.
No, but we need like a stereotype. I'm going to have to sit on that one. Probably should have talked about it before the podcast, so we could have fleshed out some
Is it
material.
Ben Carson? Who, he's having a good week. I mean, so all these things come out, the Ben Carson thing. We're not going to go down the list.
No.
But there was 16 major headlines that the news were like, okay, we can give each one of these stories 8 seconds. Each one of them is a near impeachable offense, and go. A really shitty 24 hours. And at 5:45 Friday morning, blowed his finger on the pulse, going to put all these fires out, attacks Alec Baldwin.
Right.
I'm sorry, Alex Baldwin.
Right, for his dying career. D-I-E-I-N. I'm like, did Jacques write this?
Yes. And it's like, if this is what he's getting up, focusing on, and then
You're assuming he fell asleep.
Well, that's true. But then the great thing is, I wonder, has Daryl Hammond come out and said anything about this?
Why would Daryl Hammond come out and say anything about this?
Oh, because in his tweet, he's like, oh, he does a horror impersonation.
Oh.
Like, Daryl Hammond's was much better.
Daryl Hammond?
Hammond, who am I thinking?
Well, Daryl Hammond did an impersonation of Bill Clinton.
Well, maybe Blotus was confusing the two, because he's like, bring him back.
Oh.
He's a much better talent.
I see. Right.
And he's probably thinking, it's like,
by the way, he is back. He's the announcer on Saturday Night Live.
is he really?
Yeah, he is.
That's great.
Anyways,
what happened to Don Pardo?
I died.
So we got
Alex Baldwin.
So now, moving on to less worrisome things. Putin.
Yep.
So he said he had nuclear-powered ballistic missiles, which could circle a globe 3 times, nuclear warheads, nuclear-powered drones, submarines, and missiles that could drones that could go around the globe 3 times, impervious to any missile defense systems. And some people are like, okay, is this real? Is this real? And of course, he sits down with his favorite journalist, Megyn Kelly, and she asks him flat out, it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of things that these aren't even possible to build. And he's like, no, we got them. And not only do we have them, some of them are already deployed in the field. So he's already boasting that. And the big questions are, do they exist? And if they do exist, it violates every treaty that Russia and the U.S., the non-proliferation agreements that have been signed over like the past 30 years. So if they do have these things, they're in complete, like Russia cares about that shit. And it showed, just coincidentally, of all the places it showed it could circle a globe 3 times and hit, it's Florida. And how did Blotus respond?
He said something about Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, exactly. So Kim Jong-un,
yeah,
we sanctions against them. Like last week, it's like the hardest sanctions ever. We're going after them. Name the companies that are helping them get around the sanction with shipping. Name the ships that are being used. All these individuals. But yet again, says nothing about, not only is Putin bragging about having these illegal weapons, having these Star Trek futuristic weapons, he shows a graphic of him attacking the U.S. and Blotus It's been about 72 hours since that posted, or actually 96 hours. Nothing.
Well, he doesn't like to watch the TV that much, so maybe he's just not in.
So that's funny that you say that. It came out very public, and now the talk is Putin doing this because he's up for election? Stop laughing.
Yeah.
He's up for election, and is he doing this to rally his base? Is this just his chest puffing?
Base. I mean,
right.
His base. You mean the citizens of Russia? Yeah.
So, but his support. I mean, yeah, he doesn't. I don't know if he's running against anybody he hasn't killed.
Right. Who does not want to be poisoned?
Yeah, line up for the poison soup. But here's the thing: the very next broadcast, like after this is announced, Sean Hannity starts off his show, Clinton emails.
Yeah, I know. I know. Enough. I might have to blow the Trump whistle.
No, exactly. But that's the funny thing. It's like when you said, well, he must have not seen it on TV. He didn't, because it was Clinton email time. Like, Putin is bragging. But anyways, yeah, you don't have to blow the whistle. We can move on to, so we got so many more.
Let's get off of Trump talking or not talking about Putin's arsenal of mass destruction and go on to guns.
Well, you know what? And I'm not taking the awful gun angle right now, but staying a little positive, the kids haven't relented, and these kids from Parkland, have galvanized so many others. And here it is. Now we're talking 3 weeks later, when most of these would have cycled out of the news. And not only are they not letting it cycle out of the news, here's one of the fun things, kind of sitting on the sidelines watching this. All the people on the wrong side of this issue who are now like attacking the kids via social media.
You're Dana Loesch, you're Wayne LaPierre, you're everybody else that supports and is being supported by the NRA.
All these trolls, and there was like, and it's great. It's like, when you talked about it like last week, the person who was like, how would you feel if the kid who he wasn't being disrespectful to Marco Rubio, but he was. Answer the question, and Marco Rubio wouldn't answer the question. He would just circle it back. Will you give me a yes or no? And that's what we would love our media to do. But people are like, oh, how would you feel if your child spoke to a senator like that? And then it's like one of those things where it's like so many people are like, they're being disrespectful, to adults and stuff like that. And there was this one woman, I forget her name, I think she's from Fox, going off talking about one of the girls. It's like, she's a sophomore and she doesn't know how the world works and blah, blah, blah. And it just berate her. And the girl like tweets back, I'm a junior. It's like, if you're going to get into a mean girl fight, don't pick on a high school girl,
Uh-huh.
But they have. And we've talked about the boycott that has taken new life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the companies have dropped out that support NRA TV and the NRA. FedEx, though, they're sticking to their guns, literally.
FedEx is, Apple TV still is, but
Amazon,
but people aren't like. But what's funny is like, so Delta. So here's the funny thing: Delta had this program that almost nobody knew about, and Delta said, "Hey, we're not honoring this. We're doing away with this NRA program we have." And of course, everybody was up in arms about it.
Ha ha.
And then the next day, well, here's the fucked up thing. Nothing can get done through legislation. It takes so long for bills to pass and all these other things, unless you want a bill to pass. The very next day, the Georgia legislature got together and repealed a jet fuel tax that had been basically why Delta's in Georgia and a couple other. The Atlanta airport is the busiest airport in the United States because it's the hub of a couple major airlines like Delta. And one of the things they got to have people come there and be their hub is this jet fuel tax, so they'll get there on fumes and refuel there because it's a lot cheaper because of this tax. And it saves Delta like some $40 to $50 million a year. The very next day, the Georgia's legislature got together and say, oh, if you're not going to honor this deal with the NRA, we're taking away this $40 million tax. And to Delta's credit, they turn around and says, our values aren't for sale. Fuck you. Here's a tragedy, or one of the tragedies. 13 people have taken advantage of that NRA program in its entirety. It's hardly used. Nobody knew about it.
Which is why Delta was probably quick to depart with it, because it's like, why have that with them if they're not making any money off of it? And there's no incentive for Delta to hold on to that shitty program.
Right. And what Delta said is like, no, they're not saying anything against the NRA. They just don't want their logo on the NRA website as a corporate sponsor. They just want it taken down. And then they said, look, we don't want to be partisan. We're not going to contribute to any of these things. But I mean, even after the government, of course, Georgia is one of those places. A couple years ago, they had this anti-LGBT law that was passed, and people like Marvel Studios said, "Yeah, we're not shooting in your state. If this is how people we're sending there to work are going to be treated, we're not coming there." And that law went away, and now they're bringing it back. But yeah, good for Delta. But other people like Dick's Sporting, since the last podcast, Dick's Sporting Goods, LL Bean. Do you know LL Bean sold?
No, I did not know that LL Bean sold guns.
And so a bunch of other places since our last podcast are jumping on board saying, hey, yeah, you know what? These guns shouldn't be in anybody's hands. And they're either not selling them, like Dick's is doing away with those kind of assault rifles. And then at the same time, they, some other places are raising it to 21, the age of 21. So, I don't know.
But look, Jacques, let's get to the bottom of it. Guns don't kill people. Kids who play video games who get guns kill people.
I'm sitting in Joe's cave here where, I don't think it's a secret that there's a few video games down here.
Where?
A couple of them might be first-person shooter games. And seriously, I've never seen anybody in your household with the desire to go and...
to mow down their enemies? No, doesn't cross our mind.
So, take the lead on this. Well, this is an old, tired argument.
Yeah, it's typical right-wing blame the media for the gun problem, not the gun manufacturers, not the overwhelming amount of gun sales in the United States, not the accessibility to said guns. Those aren't the problems. It's these kids with their video games and these monsters like these people in Hollywood who put out bad movies. That is the problem. So what I'm referring to is that Trump next week is planning to meet with executives from various video game companies to see what they can do to maybe either curb the amount of usages of guns in video games, or I don't know, maybe they're looking. I don't know if there's some sort of like a shakedown too from the government to maybe like say like, look, if you don't clean up your act, we're gonna come down harder on what kind of content you can have, and that could lead to censorship. Well, I don't know where this is going.
Well, let's give credit where credit's due. Bloaters came out with the good idea that for movies there should probably be a rating system.
2, 3, 4.
He actually came out and suggested that there should be a rating system.
Yeah.
And this whole gun thing, and Joe and I have joked about it. Everybody's joked about it. It's like Tipper Gore with her Parent Music Council back in the 80s and playing records backwards, and the Twisted Sister testimony at Senate. And
yeah, I mean, honestly, to be fair, they actually led to some good things. I'm gonna be the conservative about that. Like, as a parent, yeah, you probably should at least warn people what is on them, not restrict them. Like, not say, oh, this record has swears on it, or it's anti-police, or whatever the fuck, and we're not going to sell it. That's fascism. What I'm talking about is, a rating system, a warning system, which is fine. And of course, when you get government involved, it's always going to look like, oh, it's the big boss man coming down on these video game companies or these record producers. They're trying to censor us, and it's like, well, yes and no. They don't want to censor you. Like, I'm sure a lot of those legislators would like nothing more than to not have to deal with this anymore. And the quickest way would be to just ban that sort of content. But the flip side is, yeah, you probably should at least warn people about what content is on your product. But that's all been solved, so we have warnings.
How many times has that been solved? It's because the movie solved it, and it's funny that you said that about the government getting it. It was the movie industry themselves that came up with the rating system, because there was, and we're going back, I think it was in the 50s or the 60s at one point.
Yeah, they had the code. I forget what it's called, but they had the code. And then, then afterwards, after like the golden era of films, then in the late 60s, early 70s, then they started to impose there was, I don't know the history of that, but yeah, that's where that rating system came from. But I'm sure it was from sort of public outcry. But in video games, the creation of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, or the ESRB, was born out of a congressional hearing, because it was Joe Lieberman, I think, spearheaded that, or somebody in Joe Lieberman's office brought that to his attention, that these video games like Mortal Kombat, had gratuitous violence, and it was in the hands of their 10-year-old kids and parents. There was a new thing. This was like, up to that point, video games were benign and meant for kids and marketed as toys. But then, as the kids grew older and the audience matured, video game companies started to market games that were not so kid friendly, and so the government did feel like they had to. They held the manufacturers, the developers of video games, and like Nintendo and Sega, they held them to task and said, "Look, if you don't step in and create some sort of rating system that at least educates the public, then we're going to do it for you, and you don't want that." So they manned up or womaned up, as we say in 2018, and they did that, and it's fine. So, and since 1993 or 94, we've had ratings on video games, and that's fine. And we've also had since then we've had many more mature video game titles. We had Call of Duty. We had
when did this rating system come out?
93.
93.
Like Clinton era. Yeah, first term Clinton era. So you probably haven't noticed, but if you look at any of my Nintendo games, almost none of them have a rating on them. Because there was no ESRB back then. But since the Sega Genesis era, like the 16-bit era, that's when all this started. And one of the reasons, or one of the tools used by Joe Lieberman to drive home the point that these games were starting to get a little bit more mature and probably needed to be labeled as such, was there was a game called Lethal Enforcers that came out on the Sega Genesis that came with a blue revolver gun. So he used gun violence that was the first kind of, example of using gun violence as a reason why we need to put these ratings in place so that parents can be better educated. But that's sort of the birth of gun violence in video games, is that era of gaming. But it's been around. It's been around for a long time. And I'm not saying that video game violence doesn't desensitize certain kids. Like I mean, you have your kids. You have your kids play rated M games all the time. That's your prerogative. I would never do it because
You're a good person.
No, I'm a pussy. Like I myself don't play a lot of first person shooter games, but that's just there is I don't think that kids young kids should be playing those types of games. Do I think that leads to if your kid plays Call of Duty at age 10, is he gonna go shoot up his school in 5 years? No. I don't think that's the case either. Even if he wanted to shoot up this, and by the way, even if your kid wanted to shoot up a school, don't blame the video game for the reason why the school does get shot up eventually. The reason that he's shooting up the school is because he got a gun to shoot up the school.
I'm taking a step back. You said the government was coming in because Nintendo and Sega were kind of making more violent games. Is that what it was?
Yeah, for the most part.
Where's Nintendo from?
Japan.
How about Sega?
Japan.
How about Sony?
Japan.
And the school shootings in Japan happen
rampant, almost daily.
All right. Okay. So
there is a correlation. No, wait. Oh no, there aren't. There are no mass shootings in Japan that I know of.
And how about so the biggest, most violent video games that we have here in the United States, like the like the Call of Duty, are those games only sold in the U.S.?
No, they're sold in many other countries.
Really, like my beloved first-person shooter, the Resident Evil game. Those are just sold here.
Right. Those are only sold here, but they're made in Japan.
Oh, okay.
They don't sell them in Japan.
They wouldn't think about selling.
No,
so,
never.
So the most popular. How about the most popular violent movies here? The shoot 'em up movies here, or like a movie like Get Out. That was probably only shown in the U.S. It wasn't shown around the world.
I think it made $0 internationally.
And every big blockbuster shoot 'em up exploding movies, those are only shown in the U.S. Right?
I think the horse is dead.
Okay, there you go. But that's the whole thing. It's like everybody else in the world has millennial, brooding,
angry teens. Yep.
The same movies.
Yep.
The same video game.
Yep.
Only one of them has access to these weapons of war.
Yeah, that would be the United States of America. The greatest country in the goddamn motherfucking world, bitches!
But there is no correlation. It is not the guns.
No, the guns? How dare you, sir? Get out of here! Out of my house!
And like I said, who the fuck cares if Kim Jong-un gets nuclear weapons? Nuclear weapons don't kill people. People kill people. See how fucking stupid that sounds? See, I mean, it's like that's the whole argument, And one of the things on Twitter, I think we already talked about. It's like, and it's true. It's like there are more shark attacks like last year than in recorded history. And Australia put all these special things like these nettings and these warning systems in place. And somebody's like, well, the U.S. is going to give every beachgoer a shark because the only way to fight a bad shark is with a good shark. And no matter how you look at it, no matter how you want to spin this, it is so stupid. And we're only going to get back on the bloated topic for 5 seconds. He met with the NRA on Monday. Wednesday, he has the big meeting where he has, Feinstein right next to him, who's been a proponent for gun things. And he says, we got to get something done here, get something done and I'm going to sign it. It's like, you guys are more afraid of the NRA. I'm not afraid of the NRA, but we got to get something done. We got to get rid of the bump stocks. And then he says the most, what's a big boy word I'm looking for? He says flat out, I think we should just go and take the guns and then figure out due process later.
The most unpatriotic thing ever.
Unpatriotic, but even
un-American, unconstitutional,
keep going, like monarchy, like
autocratic kind of.
Right. I mean, he's and look, it's a useless game. We're not playing it. What if Obama had said anything like that? Anything or anybody else.
Time out. Is he wearing a tan suit?
No. See, so that's why you can trust him. But he says that flat out. He goes, "We should take the guns. Worry about due process later." And it's like, I'm not afraid of the. You guys. You come up with a bill. You're too afraid of the NRA. I'm not afraid of the NRA. But get something and I'll sign it. Much like he did with DACA, and everybody left the meeting saying, "Oh, he's going to get something done." I'm not afraid of the NRA. And then 24 hours later, now that meeting, about. I'm going to take care of this gun issue. It's televised. There's a lot of media there. Yep. A big pomp and circumstance. 24 hours later, he meets with the NRA.
Behind closed doors. But then he tweets afterwards, good, parentheses, great meeting with the NRA, exclamation point. That was the wrap-up of his meeting with the NRA. And what does that mean?
It means the same thing what happened with DACA. He says flat out, you guys come up with a bipartisan bill, and if you can agree on something, I will sign it. Get me something to sign, I will sign it. The Democrats walked away saying, holy fuck, okay, well, maybe this is the one thing we can work on.
The stupid Democrats. The really fucking stupid, abused, survivor of physical abuse, honestly,
he's not going to hit me this time.
Yeah, no. He's right. He's changed his ways.
And then they do. Over the next couple of weeks, they hammer out a DACA agreement before it gets to him. He's like, yeah, I'm not fucking signing anything. And again, he does the same thing. He comes out and he
Even if he signs something, he doesn't enact it.
When?
Oh, I don't know. You're right.
Like Russian sanctions?
Oh, right. That was the example that I was
but that just squeaked by. It wasn't like it was a 517-5 vote.
No, it wasn't a mandate at all.
And so, anyways, we're not going to get back on that. But
holy shit, this sucks. Holy shit. We have an awful president.
But
an awful president.
On the positive side, the kids aren't letting this go. I don't know what your plans are, but, we took, management and I took our oldest son to the march We marched against Nazis in 2017 in Boston. We're going to be part of the march on the 24th.
Oh, you mean the one that they aren't going to have at the National Mall? Because when they went to get a permit to have that held at the National Mall, the people who run the National Mall, the U.S. government, said that there was a conflict of interest because there was already a booking that day. And because, I guess there's like a student film that's going to be filmed, and they had gotten their permit in first.
So, wait. So, in 1964, when the hoses were turned on the protesters trying to march through different places in the South, and they had the big march in Washington, D.C. In 1964, and I believe, isn't that where the I Had the Dream speech was made?
68, but yeah.
60, but no, but in 60, I mean, we're talking this whole era. So even back then, they didn't keep people from being able to come and
I mean...
So we're worse than the Nixon administration, officially.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, Nixon was the 70s, but yeah.
But you can't stop the marches. They will happen all over the country. On the 24th, we are going to be part of it.
So wait, this is a Boston march?
This is a Boston march.
Oh, I thought you were going to Washington for the
we
the
would.
main Washington.
We definitely would if they move the date and have it. Maybe now, but even more, we're more because it was a few months ago. It's just like an 8.5 hour drive. I drove down there with the boys.
I know Jim's laughing at this, watching. Like he's listening to this. If he's listening, and he's going, "Yeah, you march, you fucking pussies." Like none of this is going to make any difference. You can march all the fuck you want.
I can't think like that. I can't think that it doesn't make a difference because again, I mean.
Like if we all thought like that, then obviously nobody would be on the streets.
It is.
It would go away.
And Joe, I honestly look. We grew up Sox fans, and then finally in 2004, it happened. And how many? This is a season. Have we had? And we never jumped off the bandwagon. And I believe that it's like, look, after Newtown, I thought everything would change. And the stat that the NRA keeps touting their power with. Is there was a bill. There was a big bill that went through the Senate. There were 9 Republicans up for election that year. No Republican voted for the bill. But there was 9 Republicans up for re-election that year that voted to keep this assault weapon ban from moving forward. All 9 of them won re-election that year. And that's what the NRA says. They're like, oh, well, you say, that we don't represent America. Because after Newtown, there was like, oh, no, it wasn't the weapons ban. It was the universal background check. And right after Newtown, there was a 94, 95%, polls. Every poll, I think Fox only had about 89%, but they wanted this universal thing. And it didn't pass. Nobody on the Republican side who voted against it lost elections. So they're saying it's like, well, your polls can say what you want, but here again, after... Yeah, and after Newtown, Dix for a while had stopped, selling those guns, and then started a couple years later.
Oh, so that means that the Dix going to start selling guns in a couple of months.
Let's hope not. But but again, I mean, this isn't going away. These kids are getting more. Like you talked that girl last week, Gonzalez. She's only getting bigger. On the social media, they're only the cameras aren't going away. They're not letting this go away. So
I hope not. You've seen my Twitter. I'm the one of the most annoying anti-gun people you could follow. Of course, I don't take any action. I mean, my action is I don't buy guns. I mean, it's essentially
that's okay.
I mean, that's my action. Is like I'm a nobody, but I teach my kids that guns are violent. If they want to own a gun, fine, but they don't need to hold. There's nobody on earth besides the military needs to own an assault rifle. And they know that. They can play all the nasty video games they want. They'll be fine. Except for my younger one. He's 12. He can't play the rated M game. So, no, sorry. He's not going to be playing against your 7-year-old in Resident Evil.
Yeah, so he was 6 when I let him play Resident Evil because I'm a bad person.
No, you're not a bad person. You're a terrible person. No.
So moving on to other things. We talked about this a little last week, and this is only getting to be a bigger story. We just touched on it briefly. So they're going into week 2 of a teacher strike in West Virginia. Okay, who gives a fuck? Well, everybody should. And this is the main reason why. Yes, they're striking for more money. And West Virginia is 48th in teacher pay. and the governor offered them a 1% thing, and they basically said, "Go fuck yourself." Then he turned around after several days of the teachers not coming in the protest or the lockout or the strike, whatever, and ended up coming out with a 5%. Do you know? So the teachers turned around and said, "Okay, we'll take the 5% and we'll come back to teach." And the state legislature said, "No, we're not going to do that. Fuck you." Had that 5% gone through, do you know West Virginia would have gone from 48th all the way down to 47th? Like, that's how underpaid they are. But here's the biggest reason why these teachers are striking. They can't take a day off. In the state of West Virginia, there are 0 substitute teachers. They can't get anybody. The schools are so overcrowded now because they can't get anybody to come in and teach. Teachers retire, new people aren't coming in. They can't even get substitute teachers. So here are these teachers saying, "I get sick, I can't not go in. Something happens in my family, I can't not go in. If I don't go in, these 20 kids these 30 kids sit in an empty room." And it's important to me, and I think it should be important to people, because this is one of those states. It's like Kansas. Kansas has gone through this. Kansas is a complete Republican state. All the seats, House, legislature, Senate, governor, the mayor of the big cities. And they've had these tax things to give businesses tax breaks and all this stuff. And even Kansas, after a few years of their schools getting worse and worse and worse, and the public services getting worse and worse, the legislature had to come in to overrule the governor and say, "We can't fucking do this. We can't give the rich." That's where the Koch brothers, even Warren Buffett, that's where he's based out of. I mean, if you have that much money, there's no reason to be anywhere else. West Virginia, it's the same thing. It's Republican all the way through. It's all these tax breaks for the companies that pay nothing to be there. But because they get these tax breaks paying nothing to be there, there's nothing going into the social thing, And granted, it's like when you say a word like, I heard somebody recently say this. It's like, socialism is bad. Where did you learn that? In your public school?
Yeah, I know.
So
irony can be pretty ironic sometimes.
So anyway, the West Virginia thing is important because it's just showing these trickle down things don't work. And now, why is this important? Well, the joke about West Virginia being backwards ass and stupid for all these years, this is another generation. I mean, this is a cycle that is only going to get worse. If you can't get teachers to go there and teach, and it's only going to get worse, so there's no end in sight for this teacher strike.
I just hope that the West Virginian legislatures at least have the foresight to, while these kids are not in school, to put them in the coal mines. Get them to work.
Right. And that's not funny. Because you know what? There's probably people, because we talked about that. It's like,
I'm surprised that the coal mining industry, with all the subsidies that they're getting, why don't they build coal mining funded schools? That all the classes just have to do with coal mining.
Don't put that into the ether. Somebody is going to pick up on that.
And by the way, why doesn't West Virginia just tear down that wall and go back with East Virginia?
Right, exactly.
Just merge the Virginias. Well, that way they'll have.
And so the thing is, the world's awful. It's getting worse. All right. So last month, Joe and I proved without a shadow of a doubt we can't be racist because we paid homage during Black History Month to a different black comic that inspired us or that was part of the comic history.
We ended that one with Bill Cosby. So. You're welcome.
This month, it's Women in History Month. So to prove I'm not a misogynistic bastard, because we are now going to have, for the month of March, a moment to honor women in history,
this
parentheses, month, comedy.
I was going to say this week, Dana Loesch of the NRA.
Does Loesch sound too much like douche? Anyways.
This too much. Yeah.
Too much. So that lead in, I'm going to probably I'm going to say my favorite female comic personality in history is Emma Jean Coca.
Emma Jean Coca of Your Show of Shows from the 1950s, Sid Caesar's groundbreaking pre-Saturday Night live variety sketch show.
There, you go back, it's all on YouTube. I used to, collect the VHS when they came out and stuff like that. She's one of those people where, again, the people who were part of that era of television and that era of motion pictures and stuff like that, they were such well-rounded, amazing talents. I mean, when that show comes on, she's 40s. You know what I mean? She had already been a 25, 30-year career dancer, actor, performer in Broadway and in vaudeville and stuff like that, a touring. Comedy wasn't her thing. But, she had such... her and Sid Caesar in the 40s had done a couple things together. So when he had his show, he brought her onto the show. And there's one skit in particular. I don't remember what it's called. It's a 5-minute pantomime skit between the two of them. And just facial expressions. I mean, there's no props and backgrounds and stuff like that. It's a husband and wife. And a big fight, and a big makeup, and then a big fight again. And it's all facial expressions. And she, her different looks and her different mannerisms and how she moved and stuff like that. You look at the people who came after her, who looked at her. You had the Carol Burnett's who were like, she was my inspiration. Even people like Lucille Ball, she was my mentor. She was who I, want it to be. And you have all these other giants of giants who came after her, pointing back to the same, focal point. This is who I emulated. This was who I inspired to be. And where do you rank National Lampoon Vacation on your favorite movies?
You know what? Not in the top 30.
No, really?
It's
you're more of a Christmas Vacation guy.
Yeah.
Well, Vacation and the reason I love Vacation is that was it. That started it,
yeah.
And she and that is just, and again, I mean, she doesn't have a lot of lines. She's just really only in a few scenes. By that point, blind in one eye and with a fake eye because of a bad car accident. But she still had the facial expressions. I mean, she said everything with her face and her deadpanness and stuff like that. And at that point of her career, I think if she's not 80, she's damn near close to 80 when she does Vacation. But yeah, so, and also, before I met management and we started a family, I had always said if I ever had a daughter, I would have named her Emma or Emma Jean after Emma Jean Coca. Seriously, she was before my time with the Sid Caesar, but that was something where you can go back and you look at the show of shows and you look at her specific stuff. And it's timeless. We're talking 60 plus years later that show aired, and so much of that stuff is still, because a lot of the stuff was household, like husband and wife, type thing. And again, that one, if I can find it, I will post it on Twitter, or maybe you can throw it up on the Facebook page. It's like if I can find the link to that skit, just that one alone. Again, there's no dialogue, and it's absolutely gut-splitting hilarious 70 years later.
Yep, she was comedian.
Good night.
I know I'm awful on podcasts, and I hate the sound of my own voice, so I try not to talk too much. And I apologize for that video game rant earlier. I'll try to pare that down so that you wouldn't have experienced the full length of my rambling. But I'm looking on Wikipedia regarding Emma Jean Coca, and she had a very storied career. She nominated for a Tony in '78 for On the 20th Century, received an Emmy nomination at age 80 for an episode of Moonlighting.
Moonlighting, yeah.
She died in 2001 from complications from Alzheimer's, but she lived to a ripe old age of 92. She started out in vaudeville as a child acrobat.
Yeah. If I get this right, because I just remember I read a book on her years and years ago. I want to say Mom was a magician assistant, and Dad, if that wasn't an orchestra leader, he was in like, in a vaudeville orchestra, and he might have done something else too. I don't know if he was a onstage performer or just a musician, a touring musician in vaudeville, but Mom was, I believe, a dancer and a magician's assistant. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, she's somebody who this was just like from day one. Yeah.
So we honor Emma Jean Coca by talking about her.
Does it have a list of some of the people that I mentioned, like the Lucille Balls and the Carol Burnett's and stuff? That
let me scroll down here.
And there was
Life and Legacy. Is she? No, I mean, it doesn't really talk about the people that she inspired.
But yeah.
The Wikipedia entry. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Performers citing Coca as an influence include Carol Burnett, Lily Tomlin, Whoopi Goldberg, and Tracy Ullman.
Right. I forgot. Why? How do I forget Lily Tomlin? I mean, because you think about it, and so that's it. So Tracy Ullman was big in the '80s, like mid '80s, early '80s.
Tracy Ullman, yeah, late '80s. That's where The Simpsons got its start.
I mean, so you're saying, I mean, this is a woman who, she was probably born after Coca was huge and stuff like that. And still, I mean, generations later, still being inspired.
Yeah, and she's not really talked about today because, your show of shows doesn't run on MTV anymore or never did. But sidebar to a sidebar. We are going to do a sideshow on your show or shows, and I think we're just going to do one episode on just the writers of your show or shows. I mean, but that was a tour de force of TV shows. I put it up as one of the greatest shows of all time. Yeah, I mean, it was referenced in My Favorite Year, the musical, and the play rather, and then obviously the Dick Van Dyke Show was modeled after your show of shows.
There was, and this is off the top of my head. There was a 2-year window where the writing team was Carl Reiner, Mel Brooks, Woody Allen. There was a couple other just
flops, like absolute losers in the industry.
Huge. I mean, God damn it! I'm trying to think of who else was in there, but yeah, just it's funny. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. That Byron Allen was part of a writing team with Jay Leno and David Letterman for J.J. Walker. Yep. But you're going back. I mean, Mel Brooks. Yeah, Mel Brooks. Well, that's it. I mean, who's bigger in the history of TV than Norman Lear, Carl Reiner, and in movies, Mel Brooks and Woody Allen?
Nobody. So we honor women in history by talking about men.
No, but so Emma Jean was, the female performer in that. She was in almost every skit, whether it was a singing thing, a dancing thing.
But she didn't complain about her pay like a lot of the women. Wait.
Well, let's honor women who knew their place. And, no, but seriously, she was such a physical comedian and just gifted in so many ways. And to this date, like as you read the list, I'm like, God, Carol Burnett's really up there and stuff like that as far as my favorite performer. But honestly, it for me, the epicenter of it is Emma Jean Coca.
Yeah, I wonder if your show of shows would hold up, and I'm sure it does. Like in some instances, it would hold up today.
Well, like I said, I mean, I have lots of I used to collect cassettes of like the sitcoms from the 30s and 40s, and I can tell you on another sideshow which one led to which led to which led to the Honeymooners, which led to the Flintstones, which led to Roseanne. I mean, you look at the template and stuff, and with your show or shows, so much of that comedy isn't dated because it's a lot of Eric Green stuff. It's if you're not you're stealing my bid. If you're not
Steve Allen.
If you're not Steve Allen, you're stealing my bid. You go back and you see the show or shows, and Carl Reiner's big thing was the Man on the Street interview, yes, which is still funny today.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of sorry you started with Emma Jean Coca. Not so much that we shouldn't honor her, is that the people that you named as being influenced by her are probably all my choices for honoring women in comedy over the next couple of weeks.
But that's okay, because
we're going to be talking about Carol Burnett. Probably we're going to be talking about.
How do you not?
Yeah, I mean Roseanne. Even Roseanne, like her show's coming back. Like there's a new. I mean, say what you will about the person Roseanne. Her comedy was groundbreaking, but that's for another show.
Great. No, I mean, right. And here's one of the nice things about Emma Jean Coca. She could be the biggest asshole racist, but you never knew that back then. You didn't know people's political lean for a lot of part. I know she didn't show up on McCarthy's list during the Red Scare. But all I know about her is biography I read 30 years ago and what I've seen on all the old shows. But yeah, she is, maybe I should have saved it for the end, but
yeah, it's fine.
But I'm a huge fan of hers. I implore anybody to spend a couple minutes, just Google her or just YouTube, Sid Caesar show shows or just her and she'll come up. And also she did so many bit characters and so many other TV shows and stuff like that. She's one of those people where you're like, oh, that's her, but Yeah, she was the grandma on National Lampoon's Vacation,
Right.
whose corpse got tied to the roof.
She will be missed. Where do you want to go next?
Where do I want to go next? Well, we can either go to This Week in the WHA or to a random video game review.
It's your call. This is your show.
Then we can go to a random video game review, or you can talk a little bit more about Back to the Future 3, because on last week's Sideshow, you really came to life. The passion and the energy that you felt, I say dwarfs your passion and energy on your wedding night.
I put all 1.21 gigawatts of electricity I had into that podcast about Back to the Future, my favorite movie of all time. Back to the Future 3, I showed Jacques, was fantastic, and he thought the same things I thought, which is how we roll on this podcast. If you disagree with us, we don't want to hear from you.
No, if you disagree, take the time, write it down, put it in an envelope, and then go fuck yourself.
Which makes for great podcasting. I'm sure you love to hear about us talking out of our asses in this bubble of liberal, whiny bullshit. Anyway, Back to the Future 3 was a good movie, and I'm glad Jacques got to see it and that he agreed with me on all points.
Seriously, I can't believe I didn't see it. Loved it. And then as I drove home from here, because Joe on the Sideshow said at the end of it, I'm going to make Jacques sit here and watch it. And he made me sit here and watch it. It was great. His oldest, son watched it with us. A lot of fun. And then the whole ride home, I talked to management about it, who she always liked the movie. So I had my own episode of Sideshow just talking to her about it. And it was really, it stands up. It really stands up.
Yeah, you were like, during the climactic scene where they're trying to get the train to push the car up to 88 miles per hour, and Clara's, Doc's love interest, Clara, is climbing on board and, trying to get back with them. And Jacques turns to me and goes, "Should I be this tense?"
Yeah, seriously, it's like I was watching a Patriots game. I was that tense.
Yeah, I was like, yes, of course you should. That means you have a soul.
And then when spoiler alert,
whatever.
When Marty comes back and it gets destroyed,
the DeLorean gets crushed by the train. Yeah.
I was crushed. Like literally, there was like, oh, well, there was the last part of my innocence just swept away.
And then, of course, the big finale is when you see Doc Brown and his family come back in their own brand new steam-powered locomotive time machine, which was fantastic in and of itself. But then I just like hearing you say, "That's awesome," when the train finally lifted off and flew off into the sunset at the end of the movie, because a flying locomotive that travels through time is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I thank you for a passion-driven, energetic podcast on your behalf and making me watch a really great movie.
Oh, you're welcome. So I'm going to try to guess what game I'm going to stumble through for my NES collection. I know you're all waiting to hear. I think I'm talking about Lode Runner.
Whoa, you are talking about Lode Runner.
Hey-oh!
Good call.
Lode Runner. I kind of played it. It's a puzzle game. It's from this is like
if you don't want to do a review, you can read the back like you did last week, which I thought was great.
Right. No, this is it's a arcade port, I think. Or it was a PC game originally. It's about this spelunking, person who goes into mines and tries to find gold in them there caves. You're climbing ladders. You're avoiding, enemies. You're trying to collect gold through many levels. It's an old type of game. It's one of those single screen games, I believe. Like, you clear the gold on one level and then you escape to the next level and you go on for, I don't know how many screens. But I think it's a good game, and it's probably boring to play now. I don't know if you like puzzle games. This is a classic. If you haven't played it yet and you like puzzle games, this is worth picking up. Not just for the Nintendo Entertainment System, but for your computer of choice, whether it be a DOS, computer from 1987, or a Macintosh with the black and white one with the one button mouse. but this is a good game. I would say that on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, maybe Pat Contry, who wrote the Ultimate Nintendo Guide that we rely on so heavily for this segment of the podcast,
And it's heavy.
probably gave it, I'm going to say 3.5 stars. What did they give it? 4 stars. See? So Lode Runner, players must take back gold from the bungling empire in this action puzzle hybrid. Several piles of gold must be collected, and players will have to reach them by climbing ladders and hand walking across horizontal hanging ropes and stages that scroll horizontally. There I go. So it's a good game by Broderbund Software. Broderbund, I think, also did like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego later on. You've seen Broderbund. They have that O with the, they have a slash, like O with a slash with the O in their name. It's Jacques doesn't know what I'm talking about because he was playing hockey and being cool at the time when these games were coming out.
Hey, could have been having sex too.
How much does the game cost on eBay? Who fucking cares? Who gives a shit?
I do.
Oh, I'm gonna. Okay, since you pulled it up, I'm gonna guess.
Hello.
You know, it's gonna be. I'm gonna say $6. $9.99.
So you're closest without going over.
Right, close.
You win your own game.
Yes. Wee.
So, quick question to you, Joe. Do you want to talk about Call Me Lucky, or
Yes.
do you want to do a Call Me Lucky sideshow?
No, I'm not. Enough with the sideshows.
Too much? Okay.
You've suggested 7 sideshows in this podcast, and I don't have that much time. Ever.
What are you doing?
Playing Lode Runner, apparently.
Okay, so because we're running long on time. No, but
No, we
the
got
thing,
fine.
I don't
That's
want to cut this short because it was great. You know, the Barry Crimmins
Well, why
story
spoil it for people? It's on Netflix now. They can go and watch it. And I didn't really know who Barry Crimmins was.
Do you feel remiss for not knowing who he was? Because I did.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, to jump into this, so we're talking about a Netflix documentary. It came out a couple of years ago. It wasn't made for Netflix. It was a documentary about a comedian who made he got his big break and made his cut his teeth as a comic in Boston. Although he was born and raised in upstate New York. Barry Crimmins, very vocal, boisterous, bigger than life, smoking, drinking, very well spoken, obviously, since he was a comic, but very politically charged material. Pre Lewis Black, pre Jon Stewart, Bill Hicks. Yeah, Bill Hicks had that same vibe.
But Barry's 10, 15 years before Bill Hicks.
Yeah, like Barry Crimmins apparently he started off his career, finding his way through nightclubs in New York City, but then he found that Boston, he could really sink his teeth into this town and actually make a living. And I guess he started the Ding Ho Comedy Club.
What was really interesting for me about the one of the many interesting things about it, you got to watch it. But why I asked Joe if he was remiss not knowing him, as much as he was a presence on the stage, him and Lenny Clark are considered the forefathers of the Boston comedy scene. The two of them would rent places and put on comedy nights.
Both on the either side, opposite ends of the political spectrum.
Could not be, and it's one of those things where, I kind of thought Lenny Clark was on the other side of the fence, but it's like not that far. But everybody who talked, and the great thing is, you're talking about all the big comics from like the 80s and 90s are all saying, I have a career because not only did he give me stage time, he made me a better comic. He demanded I be a better comic. And, he paid the guys well. He treated them well. He expected a certain, level of professionalism. He was, as much as he was always drinking and smoking, he was an anti-drug guy, and not an anti-drug, hey, you shouldn't do drugs. It's like, don't do drugs and get up on my stage. Get up on my stage, do a great show. But he didn't want that. But he goes, all these people like Stephen Wright. I mean, he's up there and we love him.
Oh yeah, we have Stephen Wright was in the documentary. You hear from Steve Sweeney briefly, legendary Boston comic. Jimmy Tingle, who started his own nightclub in Somerville. And of course the director Bobcat Goldthwait.
And so many of these guys talk about how he started the scene, that he was a very combative person, but also really reasonable and really smart. And again, like Joe said, like think Lewis Black, but not at all an act. Like, and not that Lewis Black is an act, but when you see Lewis Black, at the end of a Jon Stewart thing, and they're laughing, shaking hands about the rant that he went on, Barry Crimmins was pissed that the world wasn't more plugged in, and then he became a political activist. He was probably George Bush's worst nightmare. He traveled internationally. He went to places like Nicaragua and stuff like that and met with the people. But then it took a really a hard turn if you want to divulge it all. But
no, there's a point in the documentary where they go into a moment in his career where one night on stage, amidst his political ranting and butchering hecklers, which he loved to do. Brutalizing hecklers. Like, he had none of that shit. Like, how Larry David would maybe you wouldn't know, but Larry David was known for just, fist fighting hecklers, or walking off, just leaving the scene. Barry Crimmins apparently would just not let go of a heckler. He I guess one person put it, he didn't tolerate fools.
He didn't suffer fools.
He didn't suffer fools. Thank you for using the English language properly. So, but yeah, at one point in the documentary, he divulges something very personal about his past, and they go into it. And I won't spoil it here. I'll let you go along for the ride when you see this documentary, Call Me Lucky, on Netflix.
But the internet is a safer place because of him, man. Well,
yes.
The internet that you and I know is a safer place, but the dark web was probably created to get around people like Barry Crimmins.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, he was the forefront of. He led the charge against certain questionable material online, especially against America Online. And and in '95, America Online was probably at its zenith in popularity, and they were doing very little about filtering out certain types of material that the U.S. government and law enforcement, frankly, didn't even know existed.
It's when you see him, he is a big guy, unkept hair, like he has the white guy fro, and he's not very. Grooming wasn't his thing for the most part.
Right, exactly. He looked like somebody who you would be arresting. Not aiding and assisting law enforcement.
Look, he looks like the guy driving the windowless van, and he goes to the police and he's like, "Look, I'm doing all this stuff. This is what's going on in the computer," and the detective is like, "We didn't have computers at the station. Like we didn't even. We're like, okay, this guy looks fucking crazy." He's telling us all this stuff. He's handing us this material that he says is out there, and we're like, "What the fuck is this?" And it goes all the way to the Senate. And the big thing about AOL, like any of these evil fucking soul-sucking corporations, back then you paid as you went with the internet, and AOL was not turning a blind eye to this. They were going out of their way not to turn a blind eye to it because they didn't care what you were fucking doing online in your chat rooms as long as you were online in their chat rooms paying X amount per minute, per hour, whatever it used to be. And Barry Crimmins, and so, he cleans up, he's wearing a suit, and he's talking to senators, and he's just, AOL has the most high-powered lawyers, and it's like...
He's eviscerating them.
Not even
at one point there's a point in the documentary where you see during the Senate hearings one of the senators leans back to one of his aides, and the guy whispers in his ear, "Oh no, don't worry, he's with us. He's like this crazy guy that's going on this awful rant about terrible things happening on the internet. He's with us."
Yeah, because the AOL guy, came right out of Central Casting, good looking, paper well, probably a Harvard or Yale lawyer,
right? Like picture Ted McGinley as a lawyer. You know what Ted McGinley is, right? Of course.
So our Netflix pick of the week is definitely, I think collectively our Netflix pick of the week is Call Me Lucky.
Yeah, and thank you, Jacques, for recommending it to me. And by the way, as a footnote, this week Barry Crimmins passed away.
And it's like, it came up on because I watch so much stand-up. Oh, you might want to watch this. I watch stand-up and documentaries. Oh, you might want to watch this. I watched it in 2 sittings. I took a break because part of it was kind of hard to get through. And I called Joe. I'm like, you got to watch this. And then 2 days later, you see all the tweets on on Twitter and stuff like that, all the comedians that we love now saying, "Oh my God, I just heard this," he made the world a better place. He did make the world a better place.
And you know what? I'm going to say that no, I'm not remiss that I didn't know about Barry Crimmins. Maybe now I probably, if I was more of a student of comedy by now, I should know who Barry Crimmins is. But even Patton Oswalt, who's in the documentary, says, this is the kind of person pre-internet like you heard about. You heard the name Barry Crimmins, but you didn't really know what he was about or like how intense he was on stage. And yeah, like he was, you can go online now and see clips of his stuff. Like he was on Comic Strip Live.
Well, put a fucking seatbelt on. If you're seeing not TV stuff, if you're seeing club stuff where he took you for a fucking ride.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Barry Crimmins, and watch Call Me Lucky on Netflix.
So parenting tip of the week. I'll start.
You'll finish.
No, because we're in on this together. It's half joking and it's half serious. You can actually show your kids, because my kid's vision of what bars are begins, ironically enough, begins and ends with Mo. And so every time, I mention beer or we go by a bar, because there's this little tiny corner bar on the way home from school, and almost every day I put on the blinker and I start to slow down the car. And I'm like, hey, I'll let you guys have your iPads if I can go in and have a couple beers. And they're always like, there's always that look of, okay, yeah. Wait, is he really going to do that? And they associate, like, if the rare time I take a beer out of the fridge, it's like, are you going to get drunk like Homer? Are you going to get drunk like Barney? So the fact that I took them to a bar to do Simpson trivia and walked out there not inebriated actually shows them that you can go to a bar. You had a beer. I had a beer. We had a lot of laughs.
You had a quarter of a beer.
Hey, don't judge me. But it was a fun family thing. So my parenting tip of the week: never too early to get your boys into bar hopping, or girls. I don't want to be sexist.
Right. Well, which bar did you go to afterwards then? If you're going to be bar hopping, you got to go from bar to bar.
Oh, I just went to the Packy and finished off a 6-pack on the way home.
Not in the parking lot.
And then I told the boys, hey, don't drink and drive. You could hit a bump and spill your drink. Oh. Remember when drink driving was funny? Yes,
I do. Oh, well, now we got other things to worry about. So, parenting tip of the week. Yeah, I agree. Drinking is funny and bad.
Was this the first time you took your oldest to a bar?
Yeah, he's 18.
About fucking time.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah, it was, I think so. To think about it, you taken your children to bars for many years.
Yeah, I really have.
Like Buffalo Wild Wings or just legit bars to watch games.
Yeah, because in California, after management went over to cut her, like the day she left, I got rid of TV. The only TV I watched is I would go to the sports bar like a half a block away. And it was a restaurant bar, but it was a bar. 95% of people in there were the idea was to drink to the Statue of Liberty look hot.
Right. I think you spearheaded the high chair at the bar.
I did.
You were the first. You're like the Rosa Parks of bringing your kids to the bar. Some drunk wanted to say, hey, I sit there, and your child said, no.
He took the bottle, smashed it, goes, you're sitting where, asshole?
So, all right. So
I'm a bad person. They play Resident Evil at age 5, and I take him to the bar.
Right. So, what are you going to do? Call DSS? Don't.
Please.
They won't find you. Actually, to be honest, nobody cares.
So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to try to post some stuff that we talked about on the Twitter. Maybe Joe throws it up on Facebook.
Maybe.
If you can find us. Thank you for listening.
Well, let's plug our Facebook. Let's do a legitimate plug for our Facebook.
You go.
You can find us on Facebook at Carnival Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Carnival Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes. You can listen to us on Google Play. I haven't bothered to do Stitcher because, I think 2's enough. I think you can also listen to us on YouTube. I think Carnival Personnel is just Google Carnival Personnel. You know what? If you're listening to us now, you're probably not going to recommend our podcast to anybody else. So thanks for listening. You listen to us however the fuck you want, even if it's like pirated tapes from Jacques. Like if Jacques sending you like physical cassettes to listen to in your car.
Thank you again for listening, and more importantly, do not forget